Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mac. Boys and girls, Corn Pop was a bad dude, but Mac and Maplethorpe's about to blow your mind all over your face. That doesn't make any sense. I'm just trying to pump up my videos, all I'm saying. But if you've not seen my last video entitled Cracked Corn, I highly suggest you do, because it's going to give you the setup for what we're about to throw down today. This is entitled Cracked Corn from the 11th. I highly suggest you check this one out. We were talking about James Comey. We were talking about cornfields, Chuck Grassley, Devin Nunes, and the corn for to be cut. So if you want to check this one out first, it will set you up for what we're talking about for to be watched today. And it'll be like Cracked Corn Part 2, The Return of the Jedi. Let's do it. All right, I am starting you off with post 2379. This was from the 10th of October, 2018. And this is one post out of 3 Q posts in which Q actually mentions the word corn. In this particular case, it's in brackets. And this was in reference to a Market Watch article, which we'll talk about in a second. Q says, increase ethanol corn concentration in gasoline, effort to combat China's attempt to harm our farmers. Announcement tonight. And this took you to Market Watch. Here's what Trump's ethanol plan means for farmers, refiners, and motorists. We're not going to go way into this, but let me just read you the first couple paragraphs here. President Donald Trump's plans to allow the sale of a higher concentration of ethanol in gasoline throughout the year would appease U.S. corn farmers who have been stung by low corn prices as a result of the U.S.-China trade dispute, and likely even lead to lower prices at the pump. Some refiners and older car engines, however, may pay the price. Trump is expected to announce a directive later Tuesday that would allow the year-round sale of gasoline with up to 15% ethanol, also known as E15. That would include the use of the blend even during the summer driving season. Its use in the summer months is currently banned as it can produce more smog. Okay, so we're not going to talk a ton about this. I'm not in love with this. I wasn't in love with it when we reported it, but like I said back then, it seemed like it was a bit of a stopgap, and I think that's really the point. Trump is playing hardball on China and has been. And this is kind of where it began when we started talking about tariffs, and we started playing hardball all the way around. But the people who seem to have been hurt the most really throughout this entire presidency has been our farmers. And I'm not going to begin to speak for our farmers, but I want to point a few things out, how I think this is all connected to the way China is playing hardball, not just with us, but particularly with us, but globally, and what this has to do with our alphabet agencies and our intelligence agencies, FISA, James Comey, and all of that. But we talked about in my last video how we had these Chinese guys who got arrested in Iowa back in 2016. And this is one of the guys right here, Ma Hailam, who is on the right. This is from the Los Angeles Times. Sorry, I cut the title off there. But we were talking about these Chinese guys who ended up getting 2 farms in Iowa seized. They were taking these seeds and trying to fly them back to China, these genetically modified seeds. And this is a really, really big industry here. Let me read you the first couple paragraphs here. It was a chilly spring day when an Iowa farmer spotted something odd in his freshly planted cornfield, a short, bald Asian man on his knees digging up seeds. Not just any seeds, special inbred seeds, the product of years of secret research and millions of dollars in corporate investment, so confidential that not even the farmer knew exactly what he was growing. Okay, so I don't want to go way back into this story again because we covered it in my last video, but I really want to rememberize you the fact that this was really, really big money being put into this. And a lot of these people and these companies that are investing into this kind of stuff are the same people that are investing into surveillance technology and intelligence. It's a big, big deal. And even Q's mentioning this. And like I said, I don't really think this was a perfect thing, adding more ethanol to the gas, but it seemed like the only way that we could really help our farmers out in this time of need. Now, many of you out there are farmers probably, and you could probably tell me a little bit better how it has worked for you. But at least that seems to be what I'm seeing from all of this. It was a way of trying to ease the pain on some of the people that we are really obviously some of the most important people on the planet, right? Our farmers. Now, let me take you down just a little bit further before we get off of this story, because we've got a lot more to cover. But I found this very interesting in this article that I didn't see in the other articles, which is right down here. Now, this is talking about the raid itself, and this is something that I missed in the other articles. After the men left, agents swept in. They discovered 42 bags of hybrid seeds in the boxes. Each bag was marked with its own code, presumably to help identify with the contraband. The FBI replaced the seeds with other already commercially available in China and shipped them on their way. Okay, so 42 bags, and each bag had its own code. 42 bags. All right, let's move off of this for now. Okay, so again, I want to remind you, if you've not seen my previous video entitled Crack Corn, please do, because so much of this will set up for what we're talking about here. But at this point in the video, all I really want to establish is the fact that we knew there were Chinese nationals, and many of them in different locations around the country, that were messing with our seeds. They were trying to get our seeds and then send them over to China. And whatever the process was obviously illegal. This drew the attention of the FBI, but not just the FBI, the intelligence agencies. And then there was some really funky FISA warrants being put out. And of course, we're all familiar with FISA warrants because it's all over the news right now, right? So this was a really big deal involving seeds. And don't kid yourself, these seeds are extremely important. It's a huge business. But for now, I want to take what seems to be a slight turn. We are on the New York Times now, and I want to say thanks to whom I'm going to call Cloudanon for sending me this article that I remember seeing and didn't read. And I'm so glad that you sent this to me, because this was a great read. Why Napalm is a cautionary tale for tech giants pursuing military contracts. And this was from March of this year. Over the past few months, a fierce debate has erupted in Silicon Valley over whether large technology companies like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft should join forces with the United States military, along with agencies like Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Well, that's a big can of worms right there, having our tech companies get involved with the U.S. military. The debate has largely been conducted along ethical lines. On one side are tech executives and many government officials who argue that at a time when advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning are poised to reshape top issues like drone warfare or border security, American tech giants have a patriotic duty to pitch in. Okay, well, you could also argue that American tech giants are going to feel they have a patriotic duty to ban you. Jeff Bezos, Amazon's chief executive, summed up this last year. If big tech companies are going to turn their back on the U.S. Department of Defense, this country is going to be in trouble. All right, well, we're already in trouble, and I need to stop there again. Keep in mind, this article, the New York Times, reminds you that Jeff Bezos is in charge of Amazon, but let's not forget, Jeff Bezos is also in charge of the seditious Washington Post. And let's also not forget that Amazon had an exclusive contract for a while with the DNI and their cloud servers, and it means something, and you're going to find out even more why today. On the other side are a group of employees at those companies, including many anti-Trump progressives, who don't want their tools to be used for drone warfare, immigrant detention, and other projects they consider immoral. This side took a stand at Microsoft last month when a group of employees wrote an open letter to the company's top executives demanding that they abandon an Army contract that would adapt HoloLens, the company's augmented reality headsets for use by soldiers on the battlefield. Oddly enough, on December 6, Microsoft tweets this: "You can now be a narwhal with mixed reality. That is all. Hashtag CWRU, hashtag HoloLens." The very same HoloLens tech I was just talking about. How about that? Pretty sweet tech, eh? And I suppose if you had sweet tech like that, you could be anything you want to be. And if you could be anything that you want to be, I imagine most of us would probably choose the overwhelming obvious, right? to be a mammal that swims in ice-cold water and has a canine tooth protruding from our face. Narwhal, no-brainer. Well, I've talked a lot about narwhal. As a matter of fact, I've made 2 videos entitled Narwhal. I spelled it with a G, G-N-A-R wall. You can check those out, Narwhal 1 and 2. We were talking about this puppy with the tail growing out of its face. We were talking about this attack on London Bridge where this would-be attacker got subdued with a narwhal tusk. And of course, we were talking about Project Narwhal, which was an Obama program used during the election to gather intel on voters. But we're not talking about narwhals today, but I am pointing out that I'm Mystic Mac. As business deals, some of these contracts seem like no-brainers. Microsoft's HoloLens deal is worth about $500 million, less than 1% of the company's 2018 revenue, but a meaningful sum nonetheless. Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, and Oracle are all battling over a Defense Department cloud computing contract known as Project Jedi that will be worth as much as $10 billion to the winning bidder. Okay, so that is a big deal. And I've talked about this a lot, in particular back when James Clapper, when he was the DNI, he gave an exclusive contract to Amazon, even though these other players were all in play for it. And they were thinking that everybody was going to get a little piece, but instead Amazon got the whole thing. Now it's open again. And that's how it should be, of course. But this is known as Project Jedi, which is the Joint Enterprise Defense Intelligence. And the reason why I thought this was so important, especially back in the day, is because keep in mind, Amazon, although they're selling books originally, now they're selling pretty much everything online. But now they have access to Defense Department intel. But remember, Jeff Bezos also owns the Washington Post. So these people who have access to your data and Defense Department intel are also the ones that are disseminating information to the people. So this is some sketchy stuff and something that I think we should be paying attention to. But this Jedi is also a reference to the Star Wars franchise, right? Now, let me memorize you of this post from QAnon. And this was post 3602 from the 17th of November, 2019. I know. We have a little link right here. Q says, how do select bad actors attempt comms without signal intelligence collection? Rebellion or empire? Private, invite-only factions, dark to light. Well, I imagine Q might be nodding to the select button. Maybe when you actually go to this Star Wars game, you can select whether you want to be the Rebellion or the Empire. Now, the link takes you here, and this is the game, Star Wars. If you're not familiar with this franchise, this is an old movie franchise. I think most of us are. But on the left here, you see the Rebel faction, which in the movie is portrayed as the good guys, and they're rebelling against the evil Empire on the right. So Q was basically letting us know that games like this, not just this game, but games like it, was another way that a lot of these deep state actors have been communicating back and forth on video game comms. And it looks like Star Wars is one of them. And it looks like Q is pointing our attention to this sort of dark to light or good versus evil sort of theme in regards to the movie Star Wars. Now, you may also remember this reference to our boy James, nobody's homie, Comey, who also made a Star Wars reference in the New York Times article here. And as you can see in the foreground, he says it's his 7-year-old godson's toys, and he wanted to keep him in the picture. Well, here is a blown up picture, and I want to point out that those toys are very neatly arranged. That's not like how a kid usually does it. And they're kind of like an intact formation. And it's aimed at this little footstool here, which is known as a hassock. That was the word I was looking for, hassock. You can call it an ottoman too if you want. Ottoman, poof, whatever. I don't care what you call it. Anyway, but I want to point out that these toys here are all part of the Rebel Alliance. You can see in the middle there's the Millennium Falcon. That was Han Solo's little get-up. And then you got an X-Wing fighter right there. Luke Skywalker flew one of those. And then, of course, you got this little robot thing. I don't remember its name, but it was basically like, hey, did you like R2-D2? Well, you're going to love this little orange rolling ball of beepitude. But anyway, the point I really want to make is lined up in front are sort of their heroes, which is the Jedi faction. And of course, they're sort of the ninjas, the wizard warriors, if you will, but they are the Jedi. So it looks like we are referencing Jedi. And of course, we're referencing James, nobody's homie, Comey. If you have been following my channel, you may also remember that I was sort of theorizing that the toys were arranged sort of in an attack formation with the Jedi in front, and they were aimed at this hassock, ottoman, whatever, footstool. But either way, it looked like this thing was representing the Death Star. If you've watched the movie, the Death Star is an actual star. It's like a base that the evil empire has been working on, and the Rebel Alliance is trying to take it down. It looked like they were all in attack formation. Well, it looks like maybe Ivanka Trump was picking up what I was putting down, because she tweeted this on September 29th. The Force is strong in my family. And then we get a star. Are you talking about the Death Star? We're talking about Star Wars. It's the only star I know in Star Wars is the Death Star, right? And of course, the Death Star was the evil empire. Looks like James, nobody's homie Comey, is saying that he's on the rebel side. And I guess Ivanka is saying, well, I guess that makes us the evil empire. And of course, you can see one of their kids there dressed up as a stormtrooper. And the stormtrooper, of course, is part of the evil empire. But don't worry, he's probably harmless. Not because he's a kid, but because he's a stormtrooper, and they don't ever hit anything. All right, Patrick, so all this Star Wars talk, Jedi, I get you. What does this have to do with corn? Well, you just chill out for a second, because I'm getting to it. In 1965, Dow Chemical, a Michigan-based chemicals manufacturer, was awarded a $5 million Department of Defense contract to produce napalm, a highly incendiary chemical used by American troops during the Vietnam War. And that right there is New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady, who's completely unrelated, at least for now. Dow was not known as a defense contractor. In fact, until its Pentagon contract, the business was best known for making industrial chemicals and household plastics like saran wrap. For those of you who don't know, saran wrap is like a plastic wrap that you cover your food with when you stick things back in your refrigerator and whatnot. But over the next few years, and Americans began to see gruesome images of South Vietnamese children with horrific napalm burns, the anti-war movement set its sights on the company. Okay, I talked a little bit about this yesterday in reference to Monsanto, which, like Dow, was also working and dabbling in the defense. They had been working on Agent Orange, which also affected lots of people for the next few decades, I should say, in Vietnam. Now, I want to move down here, because what this is kind of talking about is how the company's reputation took a hit for so many years, and yet they've still remained a large company, but they kind of try to fly under the radar. But then they start to equate this with big tech, which is what I really want to talk about right here. Tech companies aren't making things as obviously harmful as napalm. In fact, supporters of these deals argue that some of the technologies being offered to the military, such as image recognition algorithms that can help better target drone strikes, could save civilian lives. Okay, well, that's always the way they want to sell you on it, and that's not necessarily untrue. However, there's also a double-edged sword to that, isn't there? So yes, it could save civilian lives, but it could also put a lot of lives in danger. But the truth is that tech companies have absolutely no idea how the government will use their products in the future, and how the political landscape might shift, throwing them into an unwanted spotlight. In some ways, Silicon Valley tech companies face the same choice Dow Chemical faced in 1965, accept controversial government contracts and risk a damaging backlash, or leave those deals to conventional defense contractors and protect their reputations. Now, hang with me, Patriots, because I know this is an incredibly complicated and convoluted tale. I don't completely understand it myself. I think we're only scratching the surface of what is really a complicated and decades-old tale, but we're going to attempt to consolidate at least some of this and get a general understanding of this. We are on an article from Quartz from September 21st, 2016. And let me just set at least a little bit of a timeline here. At this stage in the game, these Chinese nationals had already been arrested in Iowa for a few months now. And so this has been going on, and they were in litigation over this. Now, a month from now, Melissa Hodgman, who is Peter Strzok's wife, will be promoted associate director to the Securities Exchange Commission. And this will happen just hours after the FBI finds Hillary Clinton's emails on the laptop. Now, about a year before all this was when the ICIG was warning that there were Chinese nationals getting exposed to Hillary Clinton's emails. Who did they go to warn? Peter Strzok. And of course, they were ignored. So put that all into context when we read about these stories. 6 companies are about to merge into the biggest farm business oligopoly in history. Big farms are about to get a lot bigger. With 6 agricultural giants on the verge of merging into 3 separate companies, consumers and farmers are feeling uneasy about their global implications and how it might impact the food system. Top executives from Bayer, Monsanto, DuPont, Dow Chemical and Syngenta today, being September 20th, testified before the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee in Washington, making a case for why federal regulators should approve the mega mergers, which stand to fundamentally reorganize global agriculture. Now, here's the key part. Executives from the sixth company involved in the consolidation, which is China National Chemical Corp., declined an invitation to appear at the hearing. Now let me take you down to what's on the table. On July 20th, shareholders at Dow Chemical and DuPont agreed to a $59 billion merger that would bring under one umbrella two of the largest U.S. chemical makers. The deal is awaiting U.S. antitrust clearance. On August 22nd, Chinese state-owned China National Chemical Corp. was cleared by U.S. regulators to proceed with its $42 billion purchase of Swiss chemical and seeds company Syngenta. The deal, subject to U.S. scrutiny because of Syngenta's American business interest, marks the largest purchase of a foreign firm in Chinese history. And then on September 14th, Bayer, I'm not sure, I think it's Bayer actually, the German pharmaceutical and chemical giant said it had reached an agreement to purchase U.S. seed company Monsanto for $66 billion. If the deal is approved by U.S. regulators, it would create the world's largest seed and agricultural chemicals company. The consolidation of these six highly competitive companies into three juggernauts has left many farmers and consumers uneasy. Consumers advocates say they worry the mergers will usher in a new era of sterile crops soaked in dangerous pesticides. Farmers worry that less competition in the marketplace will give the merged companies an ability to increase prices of seeds and chemicals, something that would be particularly harmful during a time when U.S. farm incomes are dropping. Now let's take a look at some of the money here. Fraley noted that 15 years ago, Monsanto invested $300 million. That was 15 years ago in research and development. This year, it has invested $1.5 billion. By way of comparison, he said big name technology firms such as Apple are spending upwards of $10 billion a year on research and development. Left unsaid by the companies was that with the exception of Bayer, the U.S. and European giants have experienced shrinking sales. As Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina put it, Dow's numbers look like the EKG of a heart attack patient. And there you see the sciencey stuff going on right there. It just goes up and then it goes down because science. Okay, so I think at this point you're picking up what I'm putting down. We've got China all up in our tech, which we already know. And now we see that we have China all up in our agricultural business, which is also taking the biggest hit during our trade disputes with, yes, China. And this has so much to do, not just corn, but corn seems to be a big part of it. Corn alone, if you go online, you can see all the different hybrids and strains. This stuff doesn't look like food anymore. Now think of all these companies that just merged, $42 billion merger. And you've got Monsanto, who makes poison and weapons, and Roundup, weed killer, all this junk, and is also wrapped up in the food industry. Those aren't two things that should mix. Same thing with Dow Chemical. These are weapons and poisons, and it's getting into our food supply, and they're handling our food seeds. Now you also have this other company, Syngenta and DuPont and whatnot. I do know for a fact that Monsanto and Dow Chemical are big time donators to the Clintons. And of course, this was going down again in 2016, right? So keep in mind that all this was happening right around the same time. And of course, remember that part of this whole thing about Hillary's emails is that we knew so much of it was giving access to Chinese nationals. So was this just more about special access programs? Did this also have to do with our seeds, our food supply? It looks like it's very, very possible. And of course, our Bill Clinton is another 42B, right? The 42nd president, Bill Clinton. He could also be one of our 42Bs. And of course, he's wrapped up in this. He's making a ton of money off of Monsanto. That was more directly related to Hillary Clinton. But remember back in the day when he was president, he was over there in Russia making big deals with Boris Yeltsin. And I talked about this in my last video, Tyson Chicken. Tyson Chicken's another one of these big powerhouses, right? And of course, Tyson Chicken had they had plants all over, but they had big plants in Arkansas. It was a big part of Arkansas's economy, home of the Clintons. Side note, chickens tends to be a big mafia kind of thing to do, a big mafia racket. As a matter of fact, there's a great interview online with Michael Francesi. We're not going to talk about him today or anything like that, but he talks about his whole foray into the chicken business. But this is a very common thing for mob families to do. And of course, the Clintons were a mob family, but they were making tons of money off this. And Tyson Chicken was dumping pollution into their own water supplies. Tons of kids, infants were getting sick in Arkansas back in the day. We talked about this in my last video, getting salmonella, but Tyson Chicken was of course wrapped up in all of this, very much like these other big GMO companies, and they were all donating to the Clintons. And of course, any sort of record of that might have just kind of swept under the rug, seeing as James Nobody's Homie Comey was probably facilitating some of this. It looks though as if his tweets are kind of firing off that way and suggesting that he has a different loyalty, right? And of course, all this was going down in Iowa. Iowa's governor is Terry Branstad. Terry Branstad has a long relationship with China. This article is from December 7th, 2016, just months later after everything we were just talking about. President-elect Donald Trump has said that the Iowa government has expertise with trade and a strong relationship with the Chinese president. And then this is basically an entire timeline. I'm going to leave this for you because we're not going to cover it all, but this talks about all the different things that this Governor Branstad has to do with China. But I am going to pick out a few here. Let's go to April 1985, Xi Jinping, then a Communist Party official and feed cooperative director from Hebei province, spent several days in Muscatine leading a delegation of government officials. Xi stays with Tom and Eleanor Dvorak in their split-level ranch house and visits Monsanto and Heinz facilities as well as family farms. So this was going on back in 1985. 2011, Branstad and Xi right there, now the vice president of China, meet again during a gubernatorial trade mission to China, South Korea, and Japan. Branstad invites him to return to Iowa. So we know that for years now, Branstad and Xi Jinping have had a little buddy relationship. You can see some of the pictures right there. It seems pretty apparent that these guys are familiar with each other, right? Oh, look at that. Those look like silos right there. My goodness. So you see what's up. Now let me take you down here. April 2013, Branstad leads a third trade mission to China, visiting Beijing, Shenzhen, Baoding City, and Shijiazhuang. The trip includes a 4-minute face-to-face meeting with Xi. Iowa officials signed an agreement with the Chinese Minister of Commerce in 4 provinces, creating a working group to enhance trade and investment. That's in June 2014. But then you see here in December of 2016 is when he is actually named ambassador to China. So Trump seems to at least trust this guy, or at least think this guy is not super dangerous, but this guy most certainly must know what's up. After all, he's an Iowa guy and he knows very well what's going on in China. So there you go. It seems obvious that we are dealing with China in more ways than one. Now, in regards to the misspelling of James Comey's name being James 8 Corny, as we're seeing in all these different documents, I do not know if these are related or not, because we've seen this show up with lots of different people now, and of course a lot of you guys are starting to pull these out, and I think at some point we'll probably do a video on that too, whether it's John Poclesta or Joe B. Dan or whatnot, James Corny. We're starting to see this with all kinds of names, and I think we'll probably let some of that sift out and figure out what it is. Were they avoiding FOIA requests? Were they simply trying to just give themselves some culpable deniability, saying, hey, that's not me, I don't know who James 8 Corny is? Don't know, but I find this statement from Devin Nunes to be very curious about for to be cut. It seems like the corn is a very, very big deal, and it seems like China thinks it's a very big deal too. As a matter of fact, all these nations are putting tons of money into these crazy seeds. And of course, that got me thinking, wondering if this 42B has something to do with the modification itself. Now, this is from a research that was done in Brazil, and I just want to take you down. This was done in the 90s in regards to all kinds of different how should I say, biofertilizer and whatnot, but I want to show you this graphic right here. You can see right in the middle you have tomato, pea, pepper, cucumber, beef, burdock, carrot, bean, and then of course corn. And they're talking about germination percentage with percentage seed germination for selected crops treated with effective microorganisms and a biofertilizer. Okay, so the one being used on the corn here, we have a 94A and a 79B and a 72B. So it leads me to think if we have a 79B, we have a 72B, we probably have a 42B, right? And we do. They're using it on the pepper right there. You see the biofertilizer, 42B. So is this a reference to something being used on our crops, our corn, our 42B? Is the corn 42B cut? I'm not sure. I've gotten a lot of emails from you guys saying that there is a particular 42B strain of corn that was being used at the Ohio University. And I believe it's Ohio University, not Ohio State University. I have not seen that just yet. I've gotten multiple emails saying that it exists, but I've yet to see it. So if you have any concrete evidence of that, I would love to see that. That might clear up some answers. But it does appear that this 42B seems to be very specific. Corn 42B cut. And I've just shown you a $42 billion merger. And a lot of this had to do with our 42nd president, 42B. And of course, these Chinese nationals were arrested with 42 bags, and they were all individually marked. Maybe one of them was a 42B. You guys can let me know down below, but that's what I have for you on this part of it so far. All right, Patriots, that's all I got for you for now. Just a few connections and what appears to be myriad of connections for to be made. I do want to clarify that although we didn't cover the misspellings much today, we probably will at a later date. I'd like to see more of these pop up before we really do any deep digging on it, but it clearly seems like something is up when you're spelling the name James Comey like James 8 Corny. There's clearly something going on, and Q has highlighted this. Q has also mentioned that misspellings matter, so indeed they do. But Q has also mentioned ethanol and China in regards to this corn reference, which leads me to think that although maybe we haven't nailed this quite on the head, we are probably in the ballpark. After all, it does appear that we are talking about the state of Iowa. And of course, people like Devin Nunes and Chuck Grassley, who reside in Iowa, are the ones tweeting about the corn. And of course, so is James Nobody's Homie Comey. And we saw direct connections with James Comey's FBI and Chinese nationals in the state of Iowa, and the corn and the AI and the Jedi and all that. So I think that we are probably pretty close. Let me also turn you on to this little graphic here from AG Reliant Genetics. I just turned this up in my search when I was looking up 42B, and I found this from October 2018 that they were launching 42 new corn hybrids. So I'm not sure if we've nailed it on the head, but we might be somewhere close. Also remember that Devin Nunes posted that picture of what looked to be old corn. Corn like that would likely get ground up into feed. Maybe feed for chickens, maybe even feed for those chickens in Arkansas. Bill Clinton's Tyson chickens. I don't know. Another side note with Bill Clinton, his deal with Boris Yeltsin, that was a part of a much bigger deal that involved a lot of suspected drug rings, prostitution rings, and the like. But one of the facilitators of that whole thing was a friend of Bill Clinton's, and I believe at the time was Deputy Secretary of State Strobe Talbot. And he comes from a long line of knuckleheads. Strobe Talbot was a suspected KGB agent, and he's a descendant of Harold Talbot, who is another one of these guys who is a long time, big time money knucklehead. As a matter of fact, his sister Margaret was married to an early Monsanto chemist from back in the World War II days. So like you can probably imagine, this thing goes extremely deep, and that might be very well what Q is talking about. But that's all I got for you for now. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. All my alternate links are linked down below. Please join me on BitChute if you are able, or join me on one of these alternate channels. Please understand that right now, DropSpace is not working for me. I am in contact with them, but right now I can't even get on the website. So I will deal with that on my own, but maybe for the next couple days until I can figure that out, I won't be able to post there. But my alternate links are all listed down below. If you have information for me, please do not DM me on social media. Please email me. My email is down below. My P.O. box is down below if you're old school. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is also linked down below. It's all in the video description down below. You can check that out. All right, kids, this is Sir Patrick Mack. And until next time, stay funky.